We
The
are
laughter
absolutely thrilled to
started
welcome you
before
to the
he
team,
even
Ethan.
walked
Thank
into
you
the
so much.
room.
I am excited to be
It
here.
wasn't loud.
We have been looking forward
not
to
the
this
kind
all
that
week.
fills a space
Great,
and
let us all
echoes
grab a
off the
seat and get
walls.
started.
It was quieter, sharper, the kind that slips between people like a secret, the kind that cuts deeper because it isn't meant to be heard, but always is. Ethan Cole paused outside the glass door, his hand hovering over the handle. In the reflection, he caught a clear glimpse of himself, an old, slightly wrinkled shirt, sleeves rolled up to hide the wear, and shoes polished carefully despite the cracks along the edges. He looked like a man trying his best to belong in a place that had never truly accepted him. Inside, his co-workers sat around the conference table, pretending to be busy, pretending not to notice him. But Ethan knew better. He had known for weeks, ever since the whispers had started, ever since the exchanged glances and quiet smirks whenever he mentioned his daughter or left work early to pick her up from school. Tonight was their masterpiece. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up even when the world tries to bring you down, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest acts of kindness can change a life forever. Ethan took a deep breath and walked inside. He had no choice. He was a single father raising a 7-year-old daughter who believed her dad could fix anything. He couldn't afford pride, and he certainly couldn't afford to lose his job. Every paycheck meant the rent was paid, school supplies were bought, and every Friday he could surprise his daughter with a small chocolate bar that made her smile as though she had been handed the greatest treasure in the world. So when his co-workers insisted on setting him up on a blind date, he forced a smile and agreed. They claimed it was time he got back out there. They said he deserved happiness. But the laughter hiding behind their words told a very different story. They had already chosen the woman, a billionaire, someone so far outside Ethan's world that the entire idea sounded ridiculous. The date wasn't meant to help him. It was meant to humiliate him. They wanted a story they could laugh about for weeks. Ethan understood exactly what they were doing. Even so, he showed up. The restaurant they selected was the kind of place Ethan had only seen in movies. Soft golden lights reflected off polished marble floors, while gentle music floated through the room. Every table seemed occupied by people who had never worried about paying rent or counting coins before buying dinner. He stood near the entrance for a moment, feeling the weight of every glance and every silent assumption. For a second he considered turning around. Then he remembered his daughter, her tiny hand wrapped around his, and the way she always called him the bravest person she knew. That was enough. He walked in. His reservation was already waiting. The host greeted him politely and escorted him to a quiet table beside a large window overlooking a city sparkling with lights that seemed untouched by hardship. Ethan sat down, resting his hands awkwardly on the table as every passing minute felt longer than the last. Then she arrived. There was no dramatic entrance, no crowd turning to stare, no grand announcement. Yet somehow the entire atmosphere shifted the moment she walked in. Clara Bennett was nothing like Ethan had imagined. She wore no flashy jewelry and carried no air of superiority. Her elegance came from simplicity, her confidence from quiet strength, and her eyes seemed to notice details most people overlooked. She smiled warmly before taking the seat across from him, as though this unusual meeting was perfectly normal. Ethan braced himself for the inevitable. He expected judgment. He expected awkward silence. He expected her to realize she had been tricked into this setup and quietly leave. But she didn't. Instead, she stayed, and something completely unexpected began to happen. The conversation flowed naturally. Ethan found himself talking far more than he had intended, Not about accomplishments or success, but about real life, about raising his daughter alone, about sleepless nights spent worrying whether he was enough, about celebrating the smallest victories because, to him, they meant everything. He expected Clara to lose interest. She never did. She listened, not with polite nods while waiting for her turn to speak, but with genuine attention that made Ethan feel as though his words actually mattered. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. Across the restaurant, several of his co-workers watched from another table, quietly waiting for the humiliation they had carefully planned. They expected Clara to reject him. They expected Ethan to leave embarrassed. Instead, they watched something they never imagined. Clara smiled. She laughed with him. She treated him with genuine respect. Their plan had failed. By the end of the evening, the awkwardness had disappeared, replaced by an easy, honest connection neither of them had expected. Ethan walked Clara to her car, still wondering how a night designed to break his confidence had become one of the most meaningful evenings he had experienced in years. Before leaving, Clara looked at him and said something he would never forget. "Genuine people are rare, Ethan. You're one of them." Those words stayed with him long after the night was over. Weeks passed. Ethan returned to work expecting the whispers, the jokes, and the quiet cruelty to continue. But something had changed. His co-workers became increasingly uncomfortable. Because Clara hadn't disappeared, she appeared again, not with dramatic gestures or expensive gifts, but through meaningful opportunities. She mentioned Ethan during a business discussion. She recommended him for a project. She introduced him to people who valued character more than appearances. Little by little, the same co-workers who had tried to humiliate him began realizing the truth. They hadn't embarrassed Ethan. They had accidentally introduced him to someone who recognized his true worth. New opportunities followed, not because Clara pitied him, because she respected him. She had seen his honesty, his resilience, and the quiet strength he carried every single day. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't just surviving, he was building a future. His confidence returned, his finances became stable, hope slowly replaced fear. His daughter noticed the difference before anyone else. She noticed how often he smiled, how he laughed more, how the heavy weight he used to carry on his shoulders seemed lighter every time he walked through the front door. Life didn't become perfect overnight. There were still challenges, still difficult days, but life was finally moving forward instead of standing still. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated or judged unfairly? If so, how did you rise above it? Share your experience in the comments below. It may inspire someone who needs hope today. Because stories like Ethan's aren't rare, they happen every single day. They happen to ordinary people who are overlooked, underestimated, and quietly carrying burdens no one else can see. Sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to look beyond appearances, one act of kindness, one unexpected opportunity, one person who chooses respect over judgment. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness has the power to change lives, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach people who need hope the most. Because in a world that laughs too quickly and judges too easily, choosing kindness isn't a weakness, it's strength. And sometimes it's the very thing that transforms someone's darkest moment into the beginning of their brightest chapter.